Welcome to your January 2026 Global Risk Intelligence Briefing. Let's get right to it. We're here to provide a concise, no-nonsense analysis of the most critical threats to global stability and the frameworks you need to navigate what's coming. The bottom line is this: the global landscape is a web of escalating, interconnected threats. Our job today is to cut through that complexity, to really zero in on what's driving this instability, and to give you the analytical models you need for an effective response. So, here's the top-line assessment. We've identified two clear, high-risk geopolitical flashpoints: escalating tensions in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine. And what you really need to grasp is that these are not happening in a vacuum. They are the primary drivers of the medium-risk instability we're now seeing across global markets and our most critical supply chain. Okay, so let's break down those high-risk geopolitical drivers first. These are the core issues that demand our immediate and full strategic attention. First up, and this is a big one, is the Middle East. The situation there has gone way beyond simmering tensions. We're now in a state of high volatility with a significant potential for disruptions that could, and likely would, ripple across the entire globe. So what's really driving this? Well, you have a direct U.S.-Iran crisis brewing, and at the same time, southern Yemen's independence move is creating brand new friction between Saudi Arabia and the UAE. And what does that all lead to? The downstream effect is stark: a very real possibility of oil supply disruption and a serious escalation of regional proxy wars. Now for our second high-risk flashpoint, Ukraine. This conflict is not winding down. In fact, it's ramping up, entering a more intense phase with strategic implications that reach far beyond Europe's borders. On the ground, we're seeing Russia making its largest territorial gains since the very beginning of the war. That military momentum, combined with the information warfare around events like the tragic missile attack in Kharkiv, is making the entire situation more dangerous. Our assessment is clear: this poses a direct threat to European energy security and absolutely carries the risk of an even larger refugee crisis. Now, of course, these geopolitical events aren't happening in a bubble. They're sending powerful shockwaves right through the global economy, and that's creating some serious instability we need to talk about. Take a look at this. It might seem like just a chart about cars, but it's illustrating a massive economic shift. The Chinese automaker BYD has now officially surpassed Tesla as the world's #1 seller of electric vehicles. That tells you a lot about where things are heading. And really, the importance of this can't be overstated. This is not just about car sales. What we are witnessing is a fundamental transfer of power in a critical 21st century industry from the West to China. And that has huge long-term implications for industrial strategy and competition. At the same time, financial markets are looking pretty shaky. London's FTSE 100 just crossed the 10,000-point mark for the first time ever. Now, while that's a new milestone, you have to ask, in this climate, this could be a classic sign that the market is overheating. And this volatility, it's hitting our supply chains hard. Just look at this number. The price for RAM, a component that's in almost everything, has doubled since just last October. That's a huge red flag for severe inflationary pressure and major disruption in the tech sector. And it's not just in one sector. We're seeing these distress signals flashing red everywhere, from luxury retail, with Saks reportedly on the brink of bankruptcy, all the way to national security, with the U.S. government forcing the sale of a chip company. The signs of economic stress are undeniable. So, with all this complexity, this web of threats, how on earth do you make sense of it all? Well, let's shift gears and talk about the analytical frameworks we can use to bring some structure to this very messy environment. Our first tool is something called TPS tree analysis. Think of it as a lens, a way to systematically scan the horizon across 7 key areas to make sure we don't get blindsided by the forces that are truly shaping our world. Let's apply it really quickly to what we've already discussed. Technologically, we have the whole AI ethics debate blowing up. Politically, there are serious debates over executive power in the US. Economically, we just talked about that huge shift in the EV market. Socially, the Iranian protests are creating real diplomatic pressure. In trust and ethics, conflicting war narratives are shaping public opinion. Regulatory-wise, we see a rise in economic nationalism. And finally, environmentally, you have record-breaking climate events. You see how this framework helps bring some order to the chaos? Okay, now let's add another layer to our analysis. It's called the Four Worlds Impact Assessment.
This model is absolutely crucial for understanding how risks play out across totally different arenas, from the physical world right here on the ground to the digital realms of space and AI. So using this model in the Earth world, we're talking about those physical supply chain disruptions. Simple enough. But move to the space world and suddenly satellite communications become a huge vulnerability in a conflict. In the spatial world, AI ethics crises are destroying trust. And in the synthetic world, AI-generated content is literally being weaponized. This gives us a much clearer, multidimensional view of risk. All right, we've assessed the risks, we have our frameworks. Now for the most important part. What do we do about it? Let's move from assessment to action. We have to stress test our strategies against the worst-case scenarios. So let's ask that critical question. What if? What if the current tensions in the Middle East boil over and erupt into a much wider regional conflict? The primary economic fallout would be immediate, and it would be severe. We're projecting a potential surge in oil prices of anywhere from 20 to 40%. That kind of shock would trigger cascading disruptions across global supply chains, especially through critical choke points like the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. So what now? The recommendations are direct and clear. 1. Strategically diversify your geographic exposure away from these high-tension regions. 2. Hedge against the inevitable energy price volatility. 3. Intensify your monitoring of technology supply chains for component availability. And 4. Seriously assess the ethical and environmental implications of operating anywhere near these conflict zones. And that brings us to our closing thought. All the threats we've outlined today are deeply interconnected. So the real question you need to be asking yourselves is this. Is your strategy truly resilient enough to withstand the next shockwave? Because there will be a next one. That concludes this intelligence briefing.